allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to call the Milton Planning Commission of April 24th, 2024 to order. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I am Chair Judy Birds. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, comprehensive land use plan and plan map, and other related plans, and amendments to the zoning ordinance. In attendance tonight, we have Commissioner Vic Jones, Commissioner Sumit Shah, Commissioner Brian McNeese, Commissioner Kurt Nolte, Commissioner Fred Edwards. Absent this evening is Commissioner Trey James. In consideration of the agenda, I would like to make a motion to move item 6A, Old Business Comprehensive Plan 2040 update, prior to the new business for training for planning commissioners. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Do we have any public comment to date?
Need to do the
No.
Pardon?
Minutes from last week.
I need to do the minutes.
Number 3.
Okay. But we don't have any public comment so far. Okay. The next is the consideration of the minutes from the March 27th, 2024. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll entertain motion to accept the minutes from Wednesday, March 27th, 2024.
Second.
Seconded by a motion from Commissioner Edwards, seconded by Commissioner McNeese. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Not opposed. That passes unanimously. We have no general public comment, so we will proceed to old business. Emily Groff. Welcome, Emily.
Good evening. Get this plugged in here real quick. Okay, good evening, Planning Commission. I believe I came to you one time, maybe last year or in 2022. My name is Emily Groth. I'm in the Public Works Department. I'm the Environmental Program Manager for the city. So I oversee a lot of our recycling and sustainability, some passive park and green space initiatives. And tonight I'm here to just give you an introductory update on our recycling and solid waste management plan. So this project comes to us from a few sustainability short-term work program items that we'll go over. We haven't taken a deep dive into this project yet. So now is a good time to touch base, introduce myself, and look for any introductory feedback. Tonight we'll review a little history of the plan, the project scope, timeline, and deliverables, the newly formed Milton Sustainability Advisory Committee, and future public input opportunities. So this planning effort comes to us from both the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan, citing a citywide solid waste strategy as well as a citywide recycling strategy, including but not limited to a plan for glass recycling, bulky items, paints, chemicals, and electronics. And the strategic plan cites opportunities to improve the management of solid waste collection that aligns with sustainable best practices. And it's important to note that Milton's first and only plan was from 2008 to 2018, and it accounted for a much lesser population. It was adopted in early 2009. So just to consolidate everything and give you a brief flyover, this chart here shows all of our relevant sustainability projects that are active and ongoing and how they fit into the goals and verbiage of both the strategic and comprehensive plan. So here on the left, we have these big overarching projects like the plan that we're just kicking off here soon. We've got some in-house recycling operations that are ongoing that we hope to expand upon. We have annual and quarterly sustainability events, collection and recycling events, and we have the newly formed advisory committee. And all of these kind of fall into S2, S2A, and S2B for the comprehensive plan. And it's important to know that Project X, S2 was identified by CPAC as a priority project. So just to refresh you guys, I've included some metrics from the comprehensive plan, some visuals. These echo similar topics and discussions that can come out of this planning effort, like household recycling options, whether to share a recycling center with a nearby community, consider a City of Milton recycling center, or require service providers to offer more recycling through like ordinance amendments. And we've had continued interest in additional collections for computers, paint, electronics, and chemicals. Yes.
Emily, do you want us to hold questions or
Yeah.
do it as we go through each page?
Yeah, as soon as you think of them.
So on this page, what was the time of the survey for this results?
So that's a hard question for me to answer. I wasn't here during the CPAC or the comprehensive planning effort, but this came out of our 2040 most recent comprehensive plan.
So at least 4 years ago.
Mhm. Yes. That question is timely, hopefully, for the next slide.
Okay.
So we do have a little bit more updated information here that I wanted to share with you from 2022 from our national community survey. This question ranked the quality or satisfaction rate of curbside recycling and yard waste pickup. Some of this downhill slide can be explained through COVID and like waste management and public service constraints when we were dealing with the pandemic. But to get us even more updated information, we do have a 2024 community survey on the street right now, and you may have seen the post about that recently. So from that 2024 survey, we should have even more updated input on our solid waste operations. Once we get that back, hopefully in the summer, we'll be able to incorporate the 2024 results into this plan.
Well, there's a lot of, I happen to have received the survey that's going out.
Oh, yeah. did you?
And there's quite a bit in there.
Yeah.
So how will that survey tie into furthering this?
So that survey should give us some updated, sentiments
Information.
on how the residents currently feel. It's a similar question to this. We focused more on exploring regional partnerships, reducing the amount of haulers.
Right.
And you saw the questions if you got
Yes.
it. Yeah. So that'll give us a good feeler on which lane really to take, whether we want to consider reduced haulers, which I believe was the verbiage in the comprehensive plan. Consider regional recycling partnerships, just to kind of get a wider
Or
sentiment.
not get involved at all?
Yeah, that was an option too. Yeah. So we should have those results back.
Do you mind going back to the first slide for a second?
Yes.
Just those percentages underneath like 1, 2, and 3, what are those percentages?
And that's a similar answer to Miss Judy. I wasn't here at the time, but that came from the comprehensive plan as well. So it was about 4 years ago. But I don't know the population size. I can find that out for you. I think that's a good question.
So is that the percentage of the people that indicated that was something they recommended?
I believe
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Where does our solid waste go? Is it kept within the city or is it hauled off to somewhere else in Fulton County? Generally, how does it work?
It's very regional. We have an open market system right now of our waste haulers, so any resident can call our list of approved haulers, and really it's up to them. Some haulers have their own transfer station, like Waste Management and Republic. Some of the smaller guys that you might have seen, like Red Oak or TNT, they use regional landfills up in Ball Ground, like Eagle Point landfill. So it kind of goes all over. So more recently, I did want to showcase some of the ongoing efforts that we're operating in-house, specifically to improve recycling options. Here on the left is our glass bin located at Bell Memorial Park. We've had that for going on 3 years now. Just last year, we collected about 90 tons in 2023, and in 2022, that was 70 tons. So we're steadily increasing. Even more recently, we've got some collections from a grant from the Environmental Protection Division for these smaller indoor lobby collection bins. And this picture here is right in our City Hall lobby that collects handheld electronics, plastic bags and film, and household batteries.
And Emily, will that be both here and over at the Public Safety Center or just here?
Yes, right now it's just here. We have 2 other locations, the Milton Community Center at the Milton City Park and Preserve, and at the court building at Public Safety. These electronics and batteries go to a partner in Norcross, E-Waste, E-Planet. We partner with them for our annual electronics recycling event. And the plastic bags and film actually goes to the City of Roswell Recycling Center directly. In this trailer down here, we should be getting it soon. We were waiting for the new branding efforts, but that will be a mobile recycling trailer that we can park next to the Bell Park glass bin, bring it to events, and get a little bit more versatile and accessible with different recycling options. We don't have that yet, but I'm hoping to get it within the next couple months. And so all of these we can consider improvements or expansions to these examples of what we have existing. So this planning effort should provide an updated 10-year document that identifies potential service improvements and projected waste disposal needs. It should recommend policy and operational improvements that we can look at a few examples on the next slide. And we should consider future implementation of these recommendations. Timeline really begins now with you all. Next week, we'll have our first Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting. And then after that, throughout the summer, we'll offer public input opportunities with plans for council adoption this fall. This planning effort will be driven by the Sustainability Advisory Committee, and we do have a consultant, New Gen Strategies and Solutions, that will provide some assistance.
I think one of the important things is under deliverables, if you would take a survey, not probably 90% maybe don't even know that we have one. I think the time that they advertise for pickup of electronics or something of that brings it to their attention, but I don't know that most of the people know that we have someplace to go.
Yeah. And
They just dump it with the regular public or a private hauler.
Right. Yeah, you bring up a good point. I think part of this plan, at least what I would like to see from it, is expanded educational resources as well, education and communication, to not only improve operations, but to get it more out in the city and increase utilization as well.
Well, and I think, oh, go ahead.
And as a personal user of the glass recycling at Bell Memorial Park, I can say it fills up frequently and often, because when I go there, it's often half full.
Yeah.
I know early on we were trying to get it, like I'd go there and it was like, it's full, help. Milton residents have very good taste in wine and
was gonna
alcohol.
say,
Because there's very high-end labels in there. But it at
Your
least
research
is
shows
getting,
that.
my research shows that.
Yeah.
But it does seem to get well used
Yeah, I agree.
for the people that know it. Like I go about once a month and dump my glass bottles, and because most local companies don't take it anymore.
Mhm.
And then I put my cardboard out for my trash pickup. The one thing, and I think the last time you visited, Emily, I brought this up and I'd want to re-emphasize it, is the needs of the various people in Milton vary widely. And they have found a provider that meets that needs. I have a friend, she's 75 years old. She has somebody that picks up her trash, that dries up her long driveway off
Mhm.
the unpaved road and comes and gets the trash at her garage because she's not able to take it to the unpaved road to do that. There are others where a whole HOA has contracted to say, we're going to put all of ours with one because we just want
But we have,
one, so, but a lot of folks have different needs.
Mhm.
And I think that has to be considered because what an elderly person living on 3 acres needs might be totally different than somebody, let's say, living here in Crabapple. So I don't think we will find a one-size-fits-all solution that will satisfy it. So I would try to let the free market dictate as much as possible while still trying to get your goals of improving recycling and given. But I think choice is important too, because we do have some special needs out there. And I know folks that live on the major roads like Birmingham Highway have
Yeah.
said, I have to use that provider. They're the only ones that will stop on
Right.
Birmingham Highway. The others won't. So be careful because there are restrictions that certain haulers will not. There are restrictions and needs that not all haulers will meet.
yep.
Okay. Well, I think last year we had a day for, I think it was paint and some other things pick up. You had to register ahead of time. And I guess it went like that.
Oh, it's gone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I think now I just noticed something in that we've got a bulk pickup. Is that run the same way? What's the reaction been to that? What's the,
Well, if Emily will allow me to add a side note about
Go
that.
ahead.
So, in recognition of Earth Day or Earth Week, last week, we had, the city hosted a bulk trash pickup day on Saturday, which was spearheaded and coordinated by Emily. She did a fantastic job. Now, it didn't go off without a hitch. We had some areas that we know that we can improve upon. But one thing's for sure, it was well received. There was a large turnout. And I think I myself participated in it. I had old mattresses that I took, and it was great. Again, we've got some improvements to make, but everyone on Saturday that at least I talked with was extremely appreciative of having something like this, that they could bring things. I think looking into the future, I think we could host that maybe a couple of times a year. It'd be great if
Did
we
you
could do
have
it
to register?
quarterly.
Because I don't think it said that you had to register on
Yeah,
that.
I didn't
as
see
it did
anything.
on
And
that,
that's some of the things I think we can improve upon just to
Yeah.
streamline it a little bit.
Because I think
but,
registering put a damper on it.
But nonetheless, Emily did a great job with it. I think it was well received, and I look
Great.
to see more of those in the future for sure.
Yeah, I
Agreed.
would agree with Kurt that I think rather than trying to say, oh, we need to be able to do that everywhere by everyone, folks have learned to embrace the electronics recycling, the paint recycling, the drug recycling, the bulk recycling, and given our demographics, we have the ability to store some of that stuff temporarily and wait
Right.
till the next one. We're not that space I have more than enough space to store things until it needs to go to recycling.
Right.
right. And the other thing too, I think there are some, I know, for example, the Boy Scouts do a paint pickup. And I think maybe until we get this fully baked, partnering with somebody like that, use their manpower, use their workforce.
Yeah.
And we can advertise it, and we can, get them more eyes on. That might be a nice interim step to at least get some of that stuff out of the.
Yeah, absolutely.
flow.
That approach is actually what we did at the last year's hazardous waste and paint collection.
Yeah.
The paint collection was run by the Cambridge High School Theater Ensemble
Yeah.
in Booster Club.
And even the bring one for the chipper
Yeah.
for Christmas trees and things like that.
Yeah. So really what I'd like to do at a high level is kind of memorialize and consider improvements and better organize all these different events that are just kind of floating around that can be baked into a overall plan, whether we are talking about number of haulers in Milton or education or these annual more fluffy events.
Great. I think it's important. I think you can make a big impact. So thank you for going after this and
Yeah,
and putting it all together.
absolutely. So I did want to dive into what I mentioned, the policy and operational improvements. I listed some examples here, some 3 main really legs of the plan, or really what the meat of the plan could consider. Mostly we'll be focusing on improvements to Milton's curbside trash recycling and yard waste collection services. So that could be considering the number of approved haulers in the city, better organizing routes and zones, and considering those accessible and backdoor and even gravel road services. And this last bullet was really the driving force to make sure that we did gather a good group of our Sustainability Advisory Committee. While we assisted the council in finding appointments, we said, folks on gravel roads, folks with large lots, folks with long driveways, folks in more suburban areas, just to get a better pot of those service users, like you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And recognizing too, even with yard waste, those of us that live on 1 acre or more, the composting is out back.
Right.
I don't need yard waste pickup. I compost it out back because I've got woods to do it in, whereas somebody that might not have all that space does need it. So that's why I'm kind of reemphasizing that. Not everyone in Milton has the same need, so watch out for a solution that
Right.
tries to say everyone should have. You don't have to force my yard pickup hauler to have yard waste pickup. None of us need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Well, and that last bullet you have here too, I mean, the data tracking metrics, all of a sudden you start hearing 90 tons of glass. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, wow, we can have an impact. We can do things. We can make.
Yeah.
So I think those are important. You can't fix what you can't measure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we've talked about it too, but I'd like to consider additional recycling operations. Those are really the in-house drop-off locations like at City Hall lobby, the events that we mentioned, and consider regional partnerships as well. And in the plan, we can memorialize or better organize administrative policies, like the signups for the events, or even getting as high as possible ordinance amendments to Chapter 46. Waste hauler approvals, what does that look like? What are we asking of the haulers? What's required? Should we get more granular, less granular, and continue to track and improve our metrics and data?
Emily, help me out. What problem are we trying to solve in looking at reducing the number of approved waste haulers? What's the problem that I'm not sure what problem that is solving?
And think of two examples just from what I've heard in this position. I don't consider it gospel. You can hear one side or the other, but two solid examples of what I've heard. Shared sentiments is homes in neighborhoods, suburban homes that don't have an HOA or that don't have a sole contract. You can sometimes see 3 or 4 trucks going to pick up different trash on different days. That's a top contender of a complaint, as well as the use on our roads as well. We collect infrastructure maintenance fees from each hauler based on their gross receipts every quarter. But just generally speaking, the more trucks on our roads, the faster they degrade. So that's also a point of consideration as well.
Yeah, I would be one of those subdivisions, and it's interesting because some of us have different haulers. Because it used to be, it's like, I need that one.
Right.
Because when I traveled so much, I had to put the trash out on Sunday night for Monday pickup because I flew out. It was unique in the neighborhood. I needed a Monday pickup. Not everybody else in the neighborhood did.
Well, and as it turns out, trash day is every day in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
There's always a trash can out, where it'd be nice just to have 1 day or 2 days a week where there's trash on the curb and not every day.
Ours was HOA. We had a presentation of 3 haulers, pricing, pickups, how many special pickups they do. And then we voted on it. So we only had 1 pickup company because in the past we'd had 3, but 2 of them were bought out by the one that that we have presently.
Somehow I think just attrition, we're down to 2 in my neighborhood. We have an HOA, but the developer controls it. So even if we have no ability to get together to vote on who that would be. Because we do not have a vote in our HOA.
naturally down to 2.
And we're just naturally down to 2, and
Yeah, I would say just lessening the travel on roads, whether it's in neighborhoods or on our main thoroughfares.
and one only does 1 can and the other does 2, and the people that need 2
Mhm.
use the other carrier who's more expensive. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, so that's like I said, trying to assess the needs of an individual is going to be difficult.
Yep.
Okay. So I did want to, I think I've gathered a lot of good feedback so far, but these 3 bullets are kind of the main legs or table of contents that we're kind of workshopping into what the plan could consider. Certainly public input will be focusing on curbside services, in-house recycling, and any admin or ordinance amendments. So if there's any additional feedback, whether tonight or later on, I think this slide is a pretty comprehensive example. So I just wanted to make you guys aware and kind of get you thinking as we go on with the planning effort. And then I did want to introduce the committee that I mentioned previously, the Sustainability Advisory Committee. This is a standing committee created by ordinance in early 2023. It's intended to meet monthly and ongoing. Its most timely project will be the resident driving voice for this planning effort. I'll be relying on them a lot monthly to have similar conversations like this. If we're not talking about the recycling and solid waste management plan, then we'll be talking about our other ongoing environmental initiatives like our green community certification, our mini grants that we give out to our public schools every August, and help with communications or programming or staffing these different events. So they're going to be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife for me. And it's important to note that this committee was formed citywide to hopefully accommodate for those that do live on gravel roads or long driveways or different user groups of our solid waste. And right now we have 6 appointed and we're waiting on 1 more. So I did want to close out with just some pages that you guys can access and some more timely next steps. So we do have a recycling and solid waste management plan project page. If you go to our public works department, environmental programs, and then you'll find the recycling and solid waste management plan that will update with timely meetings and different FAQs. We also have a committee page similar to the Planning Commission page. And our first MSAC meeting will be next week at 6 p.m. at Council Chambers. And really, I just wanted to close with if you guys had any questions or any considerations for Planning Commission future involvement. Certainly, public input sessions. We will do a community staff-driven survey, so less formal than the national community survey that you received in the mail, just like a Facebook link, staff-driven, more accessible. We'll do one of those. So if there's anything above and beyond that Planning Commission would like, just let me know and we'll keep it rolling.
After all these meetings, this committee, then who would they report the final findings, and who takes a vote, or what's the final, I guess, decision, or
So-
how is it made?
We're hoping to have this plan adopted by council this fall. So it would be monthly meetings with the Sustainability Committee and probably sprinkled in throughout the planning effort this summer and early fall updates to City Council. And then we'll go back to City Council with a final consideration for adoption. So it'll be monthly frequent with Sustainability, infrequently with Council, and that's really all I have targeted right now.
Okay. Very good.
Open to any questions. We're kind of just now starting, but I didn't want to miss the boat with you guys. So feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions or input, or once we start getting a little bit more live and vocal with this project, if residents reach out to you, feel free to loop me in if they have any questions. Thank you for your time.
Any other questions,
Oh,
comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to new business, training for the planning commissioners. I understand the topic of the day is Plats, plats, and plats.
Yeah, all things plats. So we brought you some handouts. The first thing, person Birds asked, what is this? This is our little cheat sheet that's in the UDC now in administration, and I have it read around the subdivision review.
Can you give a little description in case anyone is so interested in going back and watching this on replay as to what you're referring to? It looks
Sure.
like
So I
it's-
have it up. Let me get it up on the
Okay.
as a PDF. So I just want to. I'm not going to really be working on off this right this second. So this is the page. So if put it over. So this is contained in our newly adopted UDC, which has its own button right now on the homepage on the right side. Very exciting.
Yay, celebrate the UDC adoption.
Yes, yes, yes. So anyway, so this is a handy dandy table that when either developers or homeowners, property owners want to do something that involves different various boards and council, you just go to this chart and see what you should do. And here we have in the upper top middle subdivision review, we have preliminary plat, we have final plat, and minor plat. And then this is hyperlinked to each section about what it's about. First, I'm going to do and show you what I created, a decision tree that'll help you understand a little more detail. And then I'm going to go back to the code and we'll go through that because you want training and we'll get into the depths of that. And then after that, we're going to be really practical and Tracy's going to talk about more mainly preliminary plats on the practical side, since that's what you all work with most of the time. And she does have some examples and I keep on clicking and taking those off. So I would encourage you to look at your monitor because this is kind of hard to see unless you're looking at the monitor. And when I tried to print it out, even at 11 by 17, it just didn't work. So anyway, so we're just doing our best here. So this is about plats. So applicant wants to submit a subdivision. So it's like, okay, well, what do I do? What kind of plat should I do? So the first question is, are you subdividing more than 3 lots?
So
We're good.
So for clarification, when you say subdivision, you don't mean what we think of as, oh, I've got a subdivision going in. It's a division of a lot.
Right, or
Into-
land, yes.
or land, okay.
Yes, yes, sorry, thank you. So subdividing more than 3 lots. Let's go to the easy part first. Say no. If you're not, submit to community development staff a minor plat. And we're going to go into more detail, but I just wanted to show you like at a 5,000 foot scale. So the applicant submits the minor plat. So basically that's, in this instance, 3 acres or 3 lots or less to subdivide that are less than 3 acres, but we're getting to that in a minute. So we submit it, they submit it, we actually review it. I didn't put that all in there. Once it meets all the regulations, it goes to the director and they have a choice to approve or deny. We'll go down the approval route, place minor plat on city council consent agenda, and it's a process called being confirmed. The staff records minor plat with the clerk to the Superior Court of Fulton County. And voila, Mr. Smith can now, one, sell the lots. So I'm going to go over that too. You cannot legally sell lots unless it has been subdivided. So many people in the past and even presently, they may sell or give by deed land, and they've never actually gone through the subdivision process. So that's a big no-no. But it happens. And then when they come to do a building permit, we're like, oh, wait a minute, you haven't subdivided. Oh, no, I have it. Here's my deed. Like, okay, that's all well and good, but we need to go through an administrative process to subdivide that land. So that is a minor plat. So if for some reason the director denies it, usually it's a matter of just having them fix things. It's not about denying a minor plat, but there is a process in the ordinance that the applicant submits a letter of disagreement within 30 days to the director. We have this technical staff that reviews and provides written recommendation. Then it goes back to the director, and if they choose to deny it again, then they appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Let's say if they go ahead and, okay, now you fixed everything, or we're good with it, approve it, and then you go through that same process to put it on the consent agenda of the city council. We record it, and then yay, they can build a house. So that's that portion of the decision tree. Let's go back up. If we do yes, subdividing more than 3 lots. Okay, the next question is, does it have zoning conditions? Let's do the easy one. Yes, nowadays we have very few subdivisions that we create out of zoning. So the most recent is great example is on Bethany Bend a couple months ago. So they created 7 lots by zoning action. That subdivision plat does not have to come back again for a preliminary plat. The ordinance says when you go through a zoning process, you can go straight to apply for your land disturbance permit, that's what the cute trees are in the brown with the dirt. So you will not see that Bethany Bend again, because that's not your prerogative, because you've already actually seen it through the zoning process. So then it just continues on through the development process.
This is the one next to Montessori.
Correct. Yes. So I do know that, except for Fred, maybe Kurt, 10, 12 years ago, there was a rezoning on the lower part of Hopewell that, what's his name? Fuquay? What's his first? Tommy Fuquay
Right.
owns on the other side from your subdivision.
Yep.
It has not been developed yet, but I anticipate in the next year or so, they will start doing it. It's not going to come back to you all. It's already been decided through the zoning process and the site plan.
Well, there's one just past ours now.
It's under development. And that was a rezoning as well about 10 or 12 years ago. So that
Okay.
did not come back to you because
Well,
again, but nowadays
Not
there
come
really
back.
is very few.
You
Right.
don't see it, period.
Right. So, like I said, we don't get a lot of those, but this is the process. You have horizontal construction. There's the LDP, and actually when Tracy gets up, she's going to show you a real live example of a full LDP or land disturbance permit set of drawings. So they finish all the construction. We do inspections to make sure the roads are correct and all the infrastructure's in and blah, blah, blah. Once we sign off on it and they pay their bonds and they do all the things they're supposed to, Tracy puts it, the final plat on the city council agenda. And she does a nice presentation and tells, hey, council, this is what's going on with this final plat. And then once they approve it, then Tracy uploads it to the system of Fulton County to get it recorded. And then we return it back to the applicant. And again, yay, they can build a house or houses.
Robin?
Yeah.
At what point does the advertising yellow sign go up? Or does it?
It does. After the rezoning, there are no signs. There are no notification in this process for an LDP. No.
So that's why on the one I asked about.
Yeah,
there's
you
never been
didn't
a
know.
sign.
Right. Because it was already done through the zoning process. So there was no notification.
Well, that answers a big question that several
Right.
people have had before,
Yeah.
not understanding that procedure.
Yeah. You just happen to have the bulk of them over by you. You got two.
That's right.
You'll have 2 of them. Yeah. So, yes. And I think even before that, I think it was Beezer who built the home south of you, right by Vaughn.
Right.
That was through a zoning process as well. Now that was years ago, but nonetheless, that was the same process. If for whatever reason, I mean, by the time you have a final plat, you already have infrastructure in. I don't see why we would ever deny a final plat. But if it was denied, or if the council did, they would appeal to Fulton County Superior Court through the system. So that's the easy peasy process in general. Now, does it have zoning conditions? No. Okay, we're going to go back to the middle. There's the yellow, no. And then the green, it says, are all the lots 3 acres or more in size? We're going to do the yes, because that's a little bit easier. Okay, so what this is the large lot incentive that we have, where we encourage the developers, if you have 20 acres or 21 acres, we would rather you do 7 3-acre lots or some version of that with more than, as long as all the lots are 3 acres or larger. And if you choose to do that, you get to do the process of a minor plat, which is a lot less work on the front end. The advantage being that you can subdivide and it's unlimited. When we first started large lots, we limited it to 5 maximum number of lots. About 3 or 4 years ago, we changed it to unlimited, in part because we had Homestead, which used to be the golf course off of Hopewell, and that they were doing 32 lots. And so it's like, okay, they have lot sizes between 4 and I think 11 acres, 10 acres, very large lots. And so that's what, in part why we changed it, because we'd done a couple large lot subdivisions that seemed to be working. Let's go ahead and open it up to allow this type of subdivision come in. And I think it was like, what, 130 acres, and you only have 30 some lots. That's really a great density for the city. So, so now as we go down, submit to community development staff a minor plat. I will say with the large lots, it's a little bit more than that, than just having 3 1-acre lots, because there is some stormwater involved. We do ask them to do like a mini LDP to take care of the hydrology. They're not necessarily streets, but they're shared driveways, but you still have to account for the stormwater. So this looks easier on paper than reality is. We do make sure that the water is dealt with in that situation. I won't bore you with all the details, and I don't know them as well because Jerry's not here. But it's not like. But the good part about it is, like I said, once you subdivide, you can sell the lots, right? So that kind of gives the developers up front some money. Now we have circumstances even today where a developer has done a large lot off of Hopewell. Everything's off of Hopewell. And, right, off of Hopewell. And they have chosen not to sell the lots, unlike Homestead. And they're trying to get all the infrastructure in before they release the lots. Now that's their choice. We keep on, right. Yeah. So Thompson. Yeah. Everything's Hopewell or Thompson. But but the point is, they could have brought in the money, sold the lots, and then did all the infrastructure using the money that they got from the sale of the lots. But that was up to them. Okay. So let's say they approve it. We go ahead and approve the minor plat for the large lots, and it goes through the same process and go back down to the red and the heart house. If the director denies it, which again, it would be pretty rare because we just work with applicants. Again, it's that same process. You go back down, there's a technical review, they re-review it, or the director's decision, they can either, again, deny it or approve it. Okay. So let's go back up to no more than 3 lots. Oh, no. We're back here in the middle. Are all the lots 3 acres or more in size? We're going to say no. Okay, they're just your typical vanilla 1.5 acre lots, what you all see as the preliminary plat. So it says to submit to Community Development Department Director a preliminary plat. That's very general, but again, Tracy's going to go in a lot more detail what that means. They have a complete application. Everything meets all the regulations of the ordinances, and we place it on your agenda to conduct a public hearing and provide comments and make recommendations regarding the plat to the director. So, we present it, you guys deliberate on it, you make comments, you make recommendations, and then again, the director will take those into consideration. He has 3 routes to go. He can just go ahead and approve it. Many times he does it based on recommendations that you all give. And then we go to land disturbance permit. Okay, so this is a much longer process if you go this way. And then again, we issue the LDP, they do the construction, the final plat goes to the council, and then they can start selling the lots and building houses. The other options that the director has is return to applicant. Say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Applicant, we want you to revise this plat because X, Y, Z. And then they return it back to the director, and then the director approves it, or they can deny it after that, or they can directly deny it from which that's not really the goal to deny. The goal is to get the best development to work with the applicant to be able to do what they do. So if it is denied, it's just one small block here. City Council considers the appeal instead of the Board of Zoning Appeals. But that's what's in the ordinance. Okay, so that is a very large decision tree going all different ways. I can send this to you because it just doesn't read as a piece of paper, but that way you can play on it on your computer. Any questions about that?
That was helpful.
Okay. Okay, now we're going to go to the nuts and the bolts of the ordinance, and I will try not to bore you too much. Okay, so we have, again, just keep looking on your screen. This was the chart I referred to. So this is called subdivision, and you're right that the word subdivision doesn't necessarily mean,
Subdivision.
your typical subdivision. It means the subdivision of land. So I'm just going to hit some highlights here. B, it says the division of property by court order, including but not limited to judgment of foreclosure or consolidation and disbursement of existing lots by deed or other recorded instruments, is not considered a subdivision purposes of and does not obviate the necessity for compliance. So basically, this means that, let's say, recently in the last year or 2 years, we've had an instance where it was instructed in a person's will, let's say that they had 5 acres and they had already subdivided it. They did a minor plat and they created 2 lots, but the will said you have to distribute all the land into 3 lots. It's like, oops, it went against, we have a regulation that says you can't make a minor plat of a minor plat unless you have 3 acres for all the lots. Well, that didn't meet that. But because it was explicit in the will, and then we had to wait for the probate judge to be able to issue a decree or whatever he did, the paperwork to say you have to do this, city, then at that point we allowed it to be subdivided again. So that's very rare. I've been here 17 years, and that was the first time that happened that I knew of. Maybe it happened before, but that's just an exception to the rule. General requirements under A in the middle, any subdivider of land except for land subdivided for minor subdivisions or proposed subdivisions of land approved through the zoning process must have a preliminary plat. So again, what I described earlier was recent rezoning of subdivision on Bethany Bend. It doesn't go through the preliminary plat process. So that's where it says that in the ordinance.
Yeah, or is it because effectively the rezoning included the preliminary plat? 'Cause we
Right, I mean,
looked
there
at
was a
plat
site plan that gave much of the same information.
information,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. To be honest, well, we're pretty tough. I mean, on either side, whether it's the rezoning side. So for instance, it does not require a preliminary hydrology study, but on the preliminary plat list, we say you do. So we had a little argument with the applicant saying, well, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that on the list. I said, this is for your best interest to do this. So we encourage you highly to do this so that you won't have problems. So that's maybe something in the future we can change. Because the list of items required is in the ordinance for a rezoning. So it's not like, you know what I mean? To truly enforce it, we probably need to change to add that.
Yeah, so what are the thoughts of the planning commission? Is that something we want to put on the list for staff to look into, considering doing that? Or how does that work? How do we?
Yeah, I mean, we can add that to the list, not just that item, but look at the list of the requirements because it is a very old list. It's never really been amended. It's been around for 30, 40 years. So
Yep.
it's
Everybody?
We're gonna go through that.
Absolutely.
okay.
Siri doesn't agree.
Siri doesn't agree.
Oh, Siri doesn't agree.
But I think I'm seeing unanimity
Yeah.
that says, let's take a look at that 30-year-old list. Just as we had some items when we went through the UDC of, gee, this seems like it should be updated.
Yep.
But let's add that to the
That list.
good things that should be done.
Right.
Because we love rewriting text.
Yes.
Don't we, girl?
It's
Don't
a
we,
never,
gentlemen?
it's a living document that does not ever stay the same. As we go further down under E, just again, this is another section of the large lot incentive. We have developers come to say, hey, Robin, hey, Tracy, where's your ordinance that says large lots can do X, Y, and Z? I'm like, I'm sorry, it's just sprinkled amongst our ordinance, but I do have a version, at least I need to make it in the UDC, that I had highlighted and said, these are the sections that apply to the large lot. So this is one of them, where it says, no building permit may be issued for property unless legal access is provided from the property to a public street or a private street or a modified single-family residential access or shared driveway. So that last phrase comes from creating the large lots. So now you don't have to have frontage on a public or private street. You can stack your large lots on top of each other and then do a shared access modified driveway, which serves as a street.
Example of that is Homestead.
Yeah.
Homestead, every lot does not have frontage to Hopewell, but they do have a shared access easement, driveway, so to speak, because they're large lots.
Now, will those be private roads or does it not matter?
They will be private.
Okay.
But they're not true streets by our definition and development standards of a public or private street. Now, they meet the regulations for fire, so fire trucks can get through them, but they're an anomaly. That's why it's called a modified driveway.
Is that because they don't necessarily have curb and gutter?
Not necessarily. It
necessarily.
is typical that the shared driveway is just sort of a rural drive, no curb and gutter. For instance, if Homestead was a true subdivision, then that road would be a width requirement for a subdivision. And then that road would have to be a minimum of 50 feet from any property line. That
Okay.
goes away
Adjacent property
with large lots. You can have a driveway, quote unquote, that's 20 feet wide, and it can be as close to the driveway as 5 feet. I mean, to the property line as 5 feet.
Okay.
And I
So-
think, yeah, and another thing is the construction. So when you have a true street to our road standards, it has a certain thickness and different materials, and we, do roll tests and core them. So that's not required.
Correct.
Yeah. So buyer beware, maybe a little bit. So you have to make sure your streets, and we're not obviously responsible for them. So it's through their HOA that they have to maintain it, just like with a private
This is the
street.
drive.
Yeah. So the next page, just want to highlight model home regulation. We do allow a building permit for a model home for each 15 lots located in a subdivision. So if you had 30 lots, you could technically do 2 model homes before all of the final plat was finished, but I'm not going to bore you with all the details. But there's a bunch of regulations that restrictions for the model home as far as development standards have to be in. You have to have the water in, you have to have a working hydrant, blah, blah, blah. So
You have to convert the final garage, but using it as part of.
right,
the-
yeah. And then also they have to be ADA accessible as well. So the model home. Compliance with city procedures under H. All final plats, replats, and minor plats must have the consent of the owners of all affected lots shown on the said plat. So Mr. Smith can't just go over to Mr. Jones's property and start subdividing it without his permission. So that's one of the signature blocks is the owner's signature. It could be multiple owners depending on the situation. Under 3, if construction activity contemplated will result in the disturbance of an area of 5,000 square feet or more, a land disturbance permit must be approved along with any building permit before construction. So,
Can we
this,
back up on H1?
okay.
So a property owner has their property for sale, but before the sale is consummated, the potential buyer comes in and applies for a preliminary plat. The seller, who currently owns it, would have to concur with that. Is that
So
what you're
not for a
saying?
preliminary plat, either for a minor plat
Or
or
minor
a
plat.
subdivision
Okay.
plat. Or a final
or any
plat,
plat.
yes. And that happens a lot with minor plats. There's a lot of sales of lands and it's contingent on subdividing the property. And so I think recently we had a situation where somebody was trying to sell and, we were trying to get all the owners' signatures, and the person who actually was the applicant wasn't being very cooperative. And it just was like, but we had to have that before we would allow it to go on to the council
Okay.
consent agenda. So yes, sometimes it's a little bit of running around. So back to 3. So here it's interesting because we have a lot of houses. I mean, it's not like where I live. I have a 1/4 acre lot, and probably when it was built, it had very little disturbance in general. But here in Milton, it's pretty often that we have to require a LDP, even for a single lot. Yeah.
So when do you know if you need an LDP? There's 2 things. One, if you disturb more than an acre, you need an LDP. Or if you're proposing to install more than 5,000 square foot of impervious, then an LDP is required. An LDP, land disturbance permit, is different than a typical single-family building permit or grading permit because it requires the 3-phase erosion control. There's a checklist from the state that has to be followed. So disturbance of an acre or more, 5,000 square foot of more than 5,000 square foot of impervious trips those qualifications for an LDP.
Oh, this says 5,000 square foot.
So
Yeah.
we may need to, if you have more than 5,000 square foot of disturbance, then a grading plan is required. Anything under 5,000 square feet does not necessarily require a permit. But if I'm grading an area of 7,000 square feet, I need a grading permit. I need to show my limits of clearing, my limits of disturbance, my tree save, how I'm going to access the site with a construction entrance, my erosion control BMPs, best management
Creek
practices.
running through it.
Say again.
I said with
creek
a creek
running.
If there's any
that runs
water.
through it.
Right. So if a property is within 200 feet of state waters, you have to do the three-phase erosion control. So, that's how when a project comes in, that's how staff determines, hey, as soon as someone submits on our City View portal and they say a grading plan, the first thing that I go and check is to make sure what their proposed limits of disturbance is. Because if they say, I want a grading permit, but I'm disturbing 2 acres, then I have to say, wait, that's a red flag. You're disturbing more than a grading permit will encompass for a review. So then we have to back up and make it a LDP. So,
How, I don't know how to ask this the right way. So here in Milton, do the majority of even single family end up needing an LDP?
there's a lot, more than the average. Certainly our large lots. If you've got a 3-acre lot, the good chances are you're disturbing more than an acre. Now, in subdivisions like Little River Estates on Taylor Road, they're 1-acre lots. So in theory, no, they're not disturbing the entire lot. They're 1-acre lot. They're disturbing 3/4 of an acre or a half an acre.
Yeah. But
So-
I get it, I
But they
get
could
into like,
have more than 5,000 square feet
They
of
could.
impervious, because
They
then we
could.
have another requirement of not more than 20% of lot coverage for adjacent to public roads and 25% adjacent to private roads. So if you take.
But
you
in
know,
theory,
that's
in a
lot,
common
yeah.
development, they've already done an LDP for the entire development.
okay.
So you're sort of under the umbrella, so to speak, that lot within Little River, you're under the umbrella of a bigger LDP that has occurred for the actual development. So it does, yes, it happens, but it's not.
It's more common to require an LDP than to not.
Well, I mean, it happens more frequently, I wouldn't say,
Correct.
than like in Johns Creek or in Alpharetta, or that, or maybe they
Yeah.
have different
Nearly every
regulations.
lot in the homestead has an LDP. They're disturbing more than in Little River, not so much, right? If you're an independent standalone lot on Freemanville or Birmingham, if you've got 5 acres, odds are you're going to be disturbing more than 1 acre. So you would
Yeah.
have an
Time to get your
LDP.
driveway in
I was-
and the house and the swimming pool and.
I was just thinking like, my house just, I've got 2,500 square feet for the house, and then I have, my driveways.
Right.
I'm probably very, very close to 5,000 square feet
Right.
that's impervious.
So you would have,
I was
something
Fulton
like that
County.
would need a grading permit along with the building permit.
Yeah, I mean, it was
which-
part of a subdivision, it was Fulton County, but
Yeah,
I'm just trying to
Correct.
imagine, would my house have needed an LDP even if it was
But that's a big
standalone?
jump between 5,000 and 43560 square feet. So, yeah.
Correct.
to
Yeah.
get-
So Robin, you were saying also in here that it does say disturbance of an area 5,000 square feet requires a land disturbance permit.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. That's what it says. And we'll have to kind of do some consulting.
Yeah.
This came directly from the subdivision regs, but I'm
But
not
the
sure if it
intent is
was
5,000 square
impervious,
feet of
if it was meant to be
impervious.
impervious versus
Right. I think it,
disturbed. So.
I got you.
Yeah.
Good
We'll note
catch,
that.
Vic.
Yeah, we'll note that.
We'll note that.
We'll go talk to Jerry.
And
See.
also in a case like Homestead, would they have an LDP for the whole development?
They did.
They do.
They did. Like what I mentioned before, like with all these shared driveways,
Right.
they have like bioswales on the side of them that all had to be calculated, and then they use the lake as some
For detention.
storage.
and then the
detention.
development itself had to meet the tree canopy. We can't forget about that.
Right.
So the development has to meet the tree canopy ordinance, but then every individual lot has to meet it as well. So you've kind of got an overall development LDP and then
Right.
individual LDPs for each lot.
So there's some economies in addressing the whole thing as,
Absolutely.
Right.
Mhm.
And so like on the final plat, after we made them, once the bioswales were constructed, they had to come back and do a revision and show it on the plat, on the minor plat. so that everybody would see in perpetuity, this can't just be mowed over or
Oh, right.
plowed over or filled in. This is something that has to continually be part of the development. So, that was definitely a big lift because it was so big, and
That's not the norm.
that's
I mean,
not the
that's
norm. That
an
was
extreme.
very, yeah. Usually the large lots are what, 5, 6, 7 lots. So, yeah. So as we go on at the bottom of 34, 12-34 and 6, each proposed lot must comply with the requirements of Fulton County Department of Health, whose certification of approval must accompany the submission of the final plat to the director. So this is the septic. So we don't accept whether it's a minor plat, whether it's a building, just a building permit on a single lot, or even the subdivision. We have to have sign off from the health department proving that they can actually provide, well, that they meet the regulations of, now actually it's not Fulton County, but it's technically the state health department that runs it at this point in time. So that's one of the things we look at when we bring in plats. 8, again, this is what I alluded to. No lot created under the provisions of a minor plat may subsequently be re-subdivided pursuant to the provisions of a minor plat, notwithstanding the foregoing prohibition. If a re-subdivision of a lot does not create any lots with an area less than 3 acres, the director may approve the minor plat when the director finds it's in the best interest of the city. So obviously, we would want to encourage the 3-acre lots. So that, let's say if 10 years ago somebody subdivided, I don't know, 10 acres and they plopped off 3 and then they want to do 2 more 3 lots, we would go ahead and let them do it, even though that was a minor plat technically 10 years ago. We'll go up to preliminary plat approval. The procedure, again, this is what was in that decision tree. A preliminary plat application will be deemed to be complete if the application complies with all applicable city, county, state, and federal regulations. And then it goes on to talk about that. I'm not sure why it all of a sudden says minor plats, because I don't think that that's right. But under it, it says for preliminary plats where any lot or other than common areas within the development is less than 3 acres after the director determines that the application is complete and complies, the director must forward to the planning commission for public hearing, review, comment, and recommendations. So that's what was in that decision tree. So I think that was a typo to put minor plats there. All other plats, again, I put this large lot incentive for preliminary plats where all lots other than common areas are greater than 3 acres and the director has determined that the application is complete, then it doesn't have to go to the planning commission for review. Okay. Here is the nuts and bolts of the public hearing for the preliminary plats. Public hearing must have a public hearing and must review the preliminary plat at its next available regularly scheduled meeting and must provide comments and make recommendations regarding the plat to the director. I'm not going to bore you with all the notification, but it's basically 14 days to post a sign before the planning commission. We obviously try to do it sooner than that. And then the mailed notices as well. What's I going to say? Okay. 5, upon receipt of the comments and recommendations of the planning commission with respect to the preliminary plat, the director must consider the comments, and I'm not going to read it all, but basically do what the decision tree said, either approve it, send it back for with comments for them to fix some things, or deny it. So that's basically what that section says. And then on the next page under B, this is like the duration. So if somebody, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, comes in January of 2024, you guys bless it, Bob approves it, and then, oh, we didn't get around to it till 2027. Well, I'm sorry, it's expired. You have to start over again. So you're actually going to probably be seeing that soon. Greystone Lakes, the infamous one that had the big bridge and all the issues. There is a new owner of it, and they're going to be putting the back portion that was against the lake into conservation and only be doing 7 lots. So it shouldn't be as controversial because it's just going to be a normal subdivision. But that's a situation where I told the owner, they said, well, we have the drawings. We're going to hire the same person. And it's like, I'm sorry, but you'll have to pay them again or make an agreement because it's expired. You can't use the same drawings because there actually had been a version before that controversial version that had been approved. It's way past the time. It's expired. You need to come back with it's going to be very similar to the first version. So again, they do expire, and that just talks about it. Talks about appeals. We went over that in the decision tree. Final plat approval. Again, we went through that. Talks a little bit more about bonds. I'm not going to bore you with that. That's Tracy's little wheelhouse, but if you have questions about bonds, you can do that. Appeals, minor plat, again, very simple. They submit it, we review it, we put it on the agenda for the council on consent, and then we record it. There is a section about combination plats. There are times, actually, a fair amount, that people decide to combine things. So it's very similar to the minor plat process. And then
Does that follow the same?
It
same
does
pattern?
as the minor plat.
And when you combine them, you can get a large lot incentive? If it's like 3 acres or more then?
I mean, we don't really care, even if it was below 3 acres, you're combining it together. So we'll let you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even if you had 3 lots and you were just combining 2 1-acre lots, it's better than 3 1-acre lots. We still have 1, and then we have 1 2-acre lot or whatever. So, and then obviously we do charge fees. So any questions about the nuts and bolts before we have Tracy come up and get to the fun practicals?
Wait.
So I hope this has helped.
A lot of information.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of it is.
Okay.
I think the biggest aha for me today is if we hear it on rezoning, we won't hear it again because
Right.
we've already seen that plat.
Yeah.
Or that site
That
plan.
ship has sailed.
Speak now, or.
I'm a visual person, so I will ask for your patience because I've got some examples that I want to show you. So I may be flipping back and forth. Let me pull up a couple of things. Hang on. I want to first start with, not that. Okay, in your handout, all of you have a colored sheet. This is the preliminary plat checklist that a developer or an applicant will follow to prepare a preliminary plat for our review. So what the Planning Commission doesn't have the privilege of seeing and hearing are our conceptual meetings with the applicant or the developer. In most cases, before we come to present a preliminary plat to you all, we've met with this applicant 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 times to make sure that they're meeting several different things. We want to make sure that they're meeting the intent of the preliminary plat as it relates to codes and ordinances. So I've got a version of a preliminary plat that's submitted, and I've color coded it. So in the yellow, this information on the checklist is what we call informational. You can see how this relates to the plat. All of the title block information is very important. It includes the name of the project, the location, the land lot, the zoning, all of the informational data for that project. And so we certainly want to make sure that that data is included.
Mhm.
The red area is what we consider the site data. If I scroll in, most of the, bear with me. Where is my Zoom?
Far right
Lower
bottom.
right.
Say again?
Bottom right corner. All the way down to the
All the
bottom.
way down to the bottom. Last.
There we
There
go,
we
there we
go.
go.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so our site data talks about zoning classifications, our density, the total acreage, any parking summary. Every preliminary plat has to have that. We need to make sure that it's meeting that. So again, this checklist is a basic roadmap of what we need when they first submit. So we've got our site data, then we immediately go to any hydrology. Is there any water on the site? Where are our drainage patterns? Those types of things. The green is considered our trees. You can see that this preliminary plat has identified what existing trees, specimen trees. Sometimes an applicant will show graphically the trees in a massing format, sort of a tree line, if you will, and give us a sampling of what types and sizes of trees are in that area. This is familiar to you all. This is rosemary that just come in a couple of weeks ago. So this is the preliminary plat that we presented to you all. And again, we've worked with this applicant to make sure that they're meeting lot sizes. Do they have the right frontage? This is a subdivision. Is their entrance drive the correct distance from the property line? If it's not, is there a reason why? So we're working with that applicant for all of these types of things, interparcel access. At this preliminary stage, they're doing a preliminary hydrology. They're not doing a full in-depth report. Those hydrology reports can be 100, 200 pages. So it's not the time for them to do that. But what they are doing is meeting the intent of this checklist to make sure that they have the basic information that they can come and conceptually speak to staff about. The orange is what we consider code and ordinance. The rural view shed. Do they meet the rural view shed along an exterior thoroughfare? Do they have the correct rear setbacks? That's identified in orange here. Does every lot show their setbacks? Are they correct? On the back are another code and ordinance requirement is streets. Is the street identified at the correct width? Can a fire truck access that road? Does the cul-de-sac or the turnaround accommodate a fire apparatus? Sometimes they may have to do an auto turn to make sure that a fire apparatus can maneuver that turn properly. Our code requires that they have a dumpster location and or a common area for a mail kiosk, a game kiosk. Do they have that? Again, the basic things that we're looking for. What you all don't see is the work ahead of time that we're doing to get it to this point. And then it comes to you, you review it. I get up and present a very overview, a summary, if you will. We're looking at transportation, ingress, egress, hydrology, trees. Does it meet the code? Have they fulfilled everything on this checklist? Any types of things like that. Their soil surveys they may do at the preliminary step, anything to get them ready to make that deeper dive into the LDP. What you all don't see is what comes after the LDP. And I've got some examples of that, okay? This is an example of a final plat that we just approved. It's called now the Ridge at Sweet Apple. It originally was called Ardenwood. It's at the end of Ebenezer Road. In fact, Ebenezer Road dead ends to this property. Back in 21, I believe, this was before the Planning Commission as a preliminary plat. And this is all that the Planning Commission saw. We worked with the applicant and the developer to make sure that they had proper lot sizes, that they accessed the property correctly, and that it did meet code and ordinance, that they had correct soils so that they could support septic systems, primary and secondary fields, that they met their tree canopy. Again, all at a very high conceptual preliminary stage. It's very expensive to do a complete set of civil drawings, and you'll see why, because I'm about to bring one up. Actually, this is the preliminary plat for Ardenwood, and I've got an example of the LDP for Ardenwood. So this was approved. Planning Commission listened to the presentation. They reviewed this. They likely gave recommendations, and then it was approved. We gave the green light for the developer to move forward with civil drawings, and then they go through that process. The approval process for an LDP can be 3 months after we leave the Planning Commission. It just depends on how many comments our reviewers and staff has, and how quickly it takes that applicant and their team to revise the drawings, resubmit, receive more comments, revise the drawings, and that sort of thing. At the end of that, that's where bonds and all of that come in. But this is, again, a one-sheet overview of what this subdivision wanted to look like. Here is the actual LDP that was submitted and approved. It's rather large, so it will take just a minute.
Big, it's taking a while.
It is.
It's big,
Thinking.
it's taking a while.
It is. So this is 37 pages, I believe, but you can see here on the sort of table of contents that they have existing conditions, the site plan, they go into road profiles, detention pond details, grading and drainage, their sewer details, the water flow, all of their erosion and sediment control, site profiles, drainage ditch profiles, a lot of information that we clearly cannot cover in a preliminary plat. Quickly, I'll go through the sheets. But you can see it's very in-depth. And this is where we really get into the details of each lot, what their setbacks are, how is drainage effective, what is the road layout, where are their primary and secondary fields, what's their overall grading, what does the hydrology look like for this grading? Are there stormwater ponds large enough to support the drainage that they're producing? You can see how this really gets into the details. And it takes quite a number of weeks, to be honest with you, to review this type of development. So each preliminary plat that comes in, this is the next step. This is the step that you all don't see. We do an extensive tree survey. We do an extensive hydrology study. We have multiple site visits. We have multiple review periods, multiple comments. So again, to go through, it's a large set. Certainly, we would not require this at a planning commission stage. When a preliminary plat comes to planning commission, that truly is the platform for a public hearing. It's your opportunity to hear what's being proposed for that development. And it's also the public's opportunity to hear what's being proposed. And the recommendations that you all provide at that meeting is live, it's real time, right? Because it's your opportunity, it's staff's opportunity to hear the public's input about this development, what concerns they might have. And while we think we've captured all of it, we're never surprised, and we always learn from the public and what their true concerns are. So you all do a great job of summarizing those recommendations that we can then take from that preliminary plat and incorporate into the LDP. And we do that for every single plat when it comes, and whatever recommendations we have, we share those with the applicant, and we do our best to implement them during this LDP process. Now, all of you have two examples. These are examples only. They are real comments that were produced, but they're examples of recommendations that we're giving at previous commission meetings years ago, right? But there's two things I want to point out. On this single sheet, when a recommendation is made to provide a hydrology study, that's already included in this LDP. So the next step is to make a deeper dive into all of this. So that's helpful, but not really. It's more generic because that's already included. When we look at wetlands and state waters, we're already doing that. If you look at the example of the comments in the in the 2-page comments, the first note says that floodplain issue is a major concern. Development buildability to be reviewed. That's dealing with hydrology, but it's a more specific direction to move into. And these comments produced in the not the single sheet, but the multi-sheet, these are more constructive recommendations that are practical. These are practical recommendations that we incorporate into the LDP. If you look at number 7, instead of a generic response, just provide a complete hydrology study or identify the wetlands, number 7 says, hey, we've got flooding issues on this site. So the applicant may need to do a pre and post. That's not a normal practice. It may be at the engineer's office, but it may not be something, if it's minor drainage, that we're considering. So again, I'm just giving examples of recommendations that commission meetings and commissioners have given in the past that have been very constructive. Not that the others are not, but this gives a little bit more direction and specifics that is very, very helpful. And I think that feedback, I would welcome that feedback if I were trying to make recommendations. So again, I give those examples just as this particular comment was dealing with some things in their proposed LDP that's not common, the large bridge. We don't typically have that in every one. So some of these comments obviously are site specific. So I'm not using this example for that purpose, but to typically say, instead of saying, hey, we need a tree survey, that's already included. What about that tree survey are you seeing at the time that we provide that overview? So I hope that helps. Let me see if I've got another.
Can we just take the wording from 15 and include that on everything we see?
Sure, absolutely.
Would it be proper on us when we get a preliminary plat that you have outlined all of the things that you've already asked and they're checked off? And we may say, oh, well, I don't have to ask that question because that's pretty well defined here, but I got a little problem with it. But
Absolutely.
This, I think, would be a good guide for us in a preliminary plat of the things that they've already.
Right, I mean, I could see it even including this saying, okay, all these, this is
Yeah.
all standard, we've already reviewed these. This is one that there may be some gray area or something.
Yes.
Yeah, or even like, this one is not applicable because sidewalks are not required, so.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
Tracy, you would normally highlight anything that was of, I guess, extraordinary concern.
Certainly.
Right.
Certainly. And in the brief staff memo that we present, right, we're trying to be in a summarized overview without getting, so staff has done that, but it does allow you all an opportunity to ask questions. And that's very helpful because there's sometimes that the questions you ask, we may not have thought about that. We are constantly checking with fire. We're constantly checking with the fire marshal to make sure that he's comfortable. The fire marshal does review conceptually the preliminary plats that come in. Jerry is always looking at it from a preliminary hydrology study. And what he's doing is looking, and you can immediately tell what the drainage patterns, where are your low spots, where are your high spots, are there any springs on the property? Are there any, or how is the water discharging naturally from the site? Is it concentrated? Is it sheet flow onto another property? So there are some signs from a quick review of a conceptual preliminary plat that raises concerns. And we have extremely productive meetings with the applicants who come in at a conceptual level, because they've got a team, they've got engineers, and they've got planners on their team that have looked at this too. So their preliminary conceptual really, what they want to get in front of us to make sure that it meets code. What questions do we have? The things that Robin went through, and even our UDC, there's a lot to go through, and it's different from every jurisdiction. So if I were an applicant submitting in the city of Milton and also submitting in Alpharetta, I might get confused. They're extremely different things, even though we're talking about the same things: trees, hydrology, access, meeting the code, those sorts of things. So yes, Fred, to your example, I would hope that you all are comfortable that we've gone through this list, but certainly your review is
No, no,
invaluable.
I'm not- yeah,
Certainly.
But I think this, I mean, one question that always comes up is the fire, the turn. Well, we can still ask that,
Absolutely.
you know. It
Absolutely.
doesn't look like that fire truck could turn around, even though you've checked it off.
Right.
Those, we could still ask all those questions.
And
But
that's
this
so
is,
helpful,
I
because you
think,
have to
an
remember
outstanding guide for us,
that's right.
I think.
And it's only conceptual. Look at that, the example that I showed of Ardenwood, you had one sheet. The LDP had 37 sheets. So it's you're not really getting a fair shake at it, because you're not seeing that 37-page document. That's not really applicable or appropriate, right? From a preliminary standpoint, you want to make sure that it's meeting all the code. And that's exactly what staff is doing from a conceptual standpoint when we meet with the applicants. There are times that when we leave the planning commission with the direction that it's been approved with these or that it's recommended these conditions, the community development director approves it, that we get into the details of the LDP, and there are some things that don't work. We've got to change lot sizes, or we have to change the entrance a little bit, or this road, or the grading may not work. Jerry may get the hydrology study, and it's not really adding up. So there are certainly changes from the conceptual until we get to that approved LDP stage. Certainly we could. So recently we had the Crabapple North market right across the street
Right.
here come in. We had great public input at that meeting, one of which was a concern about lighting in the rear corner and parking in the rear corner. So that was an instance where, from public input and from the recommendation from the Planning Commission, that we went back with the applicant, and before actually approving to move forward with the LDP, we worked with them to incorporate those considerations and recommendations from that meeting. And they did. They went back, they took the public comment and input, recommendations from you all, and revised the site plan, the proposed site plan, so that it addressed and accommodated those comments. So your comments do not go unnoticed. We incorporate those as best we can, certainly, into that LDP process.
Well, in that case, we even had a citizen come up and tell us what a great job that work, that
We
the
did.
work.
We brought that back to you all just as a courtesy to say, hey, look what happened. There was a revision from this. So
That was a win.
what you all are recommending and reviewing at these planning commissions truly are being implemented. It's just, unfortunately, you don't get to see it a lot because it goes through such a process through the LDP.
Very good.
Great.
Any questions?
Now we're all excited to have some more preliminary plans.
Aren't
or
you?
not.
Sure.
Or not. Thank you. Speaking of that, what do we have coming up? Do we have any? preliminary
No,
pla-
we do not have anything on the docket at this point, and there's no preliminary plats that are ready to be queued up to you. So, and to meet, it's a very early, I think it's the 23rd or 24th of May. It's an early meeting.
Right.
So we don't anticipate anything.
We have some in the pipeline. We do
Right,
have-
right, but
we-
they're
but
not
we don't
ready.
have any that are
Okay,
teed
they're
up for
asking us
next.
about
No,
their schedule on May. In May.
right, not for May. Maybe June, probably June.
Excellent, great job.
So do we have anything on, so if we have nothing to meet on, is there the possibility we may not meet in May? Or,
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't foresee anything. There won't be any rezonings or use permits. It's already the 24th, 25th. I mean, probably in another week, I could firmly say there wouldn't be anything. Let you know, and then if there's nothing in the agenda, we can cancel it if that's what y'all want to do. Memorial
May is always
Day.
usually busy for people with kids' events and things like that.
Memorial Day.
In the
Yeah,
school,
it's right before
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day
think
too.
that's-
The last week of school, yeah.
But I'm off too. My daughter's having twins, so
Whoa.
having a C-section.
Well, that in itself. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't cancel for Emily's wedding.
Yeah.
And congratulations, if you're out there. So,
Not that other people can't operate the
yeah,
meeting.
so stay tuned. I guess we may cancel May.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else? Any other questions, inputs? Thank you, Tracy.
No, you're
Thank you.
welcome.
That
Great.
was very
This is fantastic.
helpful.
Good,
Thank you
good. I
for
hope
all
it
that you
helps.
do.
Very good.
Yes.
You know, what's funny, Tracy, is I'm a civil engineer and I've done dozens of these LDPs, but when you explain it, it's like, wow, that sounds hard.
It is sometimes.
I wish some of my clients could come in and hear this presentation. It's hard to,
You could just make them watch this meeting.
I know, right? It's hard for them to understand the length of time that it takes. It's like, why does it take so long? And then, when I explain that it takes 2 or 3 weeks for you guys to review stuff,
Right.
it's like, why does it take that long?
Because we don't just have one. We've
Right.
got
Yeah.
pool permits.
That's a
and
lot
we've
to
got
get into.
Building permits, and we've got fence permits, and so it is a lot.
Yeah.
But I can't verbalize enough how extremely helpful it is for the applicant to come in. We make ourselves available for courtesy reviews and meetings all the time, because there's just something about sitting across a table with a hard copy set of plans unrolled and really talking through it. And so those meetings are extremely productive, extremely productive. And there's so many different variations that preliminary conceptual plan goes through before it gets to here. So,
Well, this might also be a good one to do, like a quick half-hour training recording. That way, you've got all the material already built, and just voice over it as you show it. That way, anybody on the planning commission, anybody with questions can just, get access to a lobby. That we could build up a library of those so that you don't have to keep doing this
exactly.
every so often.
Well, and for you seasoned commissioners, this is a good reminder, right? But for our new members, it's a little, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of things that we have to check. And it's so much, it takes a team. It takes Robin, myself, Emily. Sometimes I don't see it the very first time. Sometimes it's our arborist catching it. And we're like, oh, right. So it does take a team to look through all of these drawings for sure.
But once in a while, something slips through so we can catch it. And sometimes I wonder, did you leave it off so we'll have something? some
You all do a
value
great
add to
job.
provide.
You all-
I
And
caught one
sometimes
really
we've looked at it so much, we need a fresh pair of eyes.
Yes.
So
like it.
it does help, for sure.
If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner McNeese, a second from Commissioner Edwards. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We stand adjourned until either May or June.